Aviation-Quest CC 101, wind 270 degrees, 10 knots, runway 27 left, cleared for takeoff.
Aviation-Quest CC 101, cleared for takeoff 27 left. V1, rotate. Positive climb.
Aviation-Quest CC. Stories from above. The views shared in this podcast are personal and for informational purposes only. They do not reflect any employer or aviation authority, and nothing discussed here should be considered flight training or regulatory guidance. Please always refer to official sources. This episode may also contain product placement. For further information, visit our website aviation-quest.cc.
It's October 1st and 13 Zulu time. Your host, Jürgen Weiss, one of the two podcast pilots in command here at Aviation-Quest CC, welcomes you in the show, and super that I am also today not alone. Stefan, hello, live on tape.
Hey, how are you?
Stefan, we are already in the 5th round of this podcast. No, it's the 5th round of our FAQ. It is episode 6. And yeah, who'd have thought we turned this FAQ somehow into a long-running project already from the beginning?
Yes. Well, we'll see. We'll get through it in the end.
I was just thinking of an aviation metaphor. What is this? We are shallowing the glide slope or something like this.
Well, in our case, it looks like we are diverting to a completely different country.
Okay, we could also say it this way, yeah. We made a short haul into a long haul flight.
Yes.
But I think also today there's a super interesting question, and I'm just curious if this is a simple question alone, because it is not that simple, especially when I speak to somebody like you, but step by step is already, yeah, it's a loaded one. It's quite an interesting one, especially for people or for listeners who maybe look for other ways to get into aviation than to enter the cockpit. Because the 7th question is, are you ready, Stefan?
Yeah.
The 7th question is, which is more fun, working as cabin crew or as a pilot? What are the pros and cons of both professional bases based on your experience? So what are the pros and cons of both, so to say, both worlds or both professions based on your experience? And your experience, I think, yeah, give us a little bit an inside view, because you started off as a cabin crew member. You already pointed out in the premiere episode of this project, but step by step.
Yes. So when I'm asked this question, the very short answer is the cockpit is more interesting, but I had more fun in the cabin. So what does that mean? Essentially, I was long haul when I was in the cabin. So there were usually always around 15 cabin crew. And there's always people that you get along with really well, and you have people to talk to, and, you have passengers that, despite everything what you hear, 99% of all passengers are actually really nice and very pleasant. And, the time goes by pretty quickly, even on a 12-hour flight. If you're in the cockpit, there's obviously that the work is more interesting, more involved. You fly the aircraft, you operate everything, but there's only two of you usually. And you know what it's like. Not everyone in the world is gonna be your best friend. Sometimes you have someone in the cockpit next to you. You just don't know what to talk about. There's not much in common. It doesn't even need to be that you don't get along. Maybe you do get along, but there's just no common ground, nothing to really talk about. And then it can become a very long flight very quickly, because once you're in a cruise, the workload drops significantly. and there really isn't all that much to do anymore. And then really the only thing that's left is the guy next to you or the woman next to you. And yeah, while it's in the cabin, there's loads and there's passengers and there's lots of stuff going on. So usually, the cabin crew is where all the gossip is and where all the fun is, and the pilots are more the serious one. Now, having said that, there are some very, very nice colleagues in the cockpit where we also, have a lot of fun and we laugh a lot when you share the same sense of humor. Of course, that does happen as well, but you are dependent usually on one other person. Whilst in the cabin, especially if there's 15 of you, you will always find two or three people that are on your wavelength. So that's how I would describe it. In terms of work, I mean, cabin crew is obviously all about safety as well, from a different aspect, but in day-to-day life, you deal a lot with passengers. You are sort of, from first aid to psychologists to everything. You have to be very flexible, very patient sometimes. Whilst in a cockpit, I would argue most flights are pretty much the same. It's a very structured work day with, fixed procedures and everything. But I think it really comes down to what suits you best. I've had this conversation with cabin crew. Some of them say they would be interested in coming into the cockpit. Others say they would hate it to work in the cockpit. So, everybody's different. Everybody has different preferences.
So the answer to the first part of this question, so which is more fun? Cabin crew.
Yeah, I think so. Overall, in the cabin, you spend a lot of time laughing and giggling and gossiping, and, that doesn't happen a lot in the cockpit.
But on the other hand, certainly, I think this is also why you made this career change. The cockpit is a whole other world when it comes. Yeah, I mean, you are flying the airplane, and in cabin crew, certainly, there are other tasks you just pointed out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I always wanted to be in the cockpit because I just enjoy being a pilot and I love, being in control of the aircraft and all the procedures and all that stuff. So for me, I don't get me wrong, as funny as it is in the cabin, I wouldn't go back. I will stay in the cockpit. I'm very happy where I am. Um, so yeah, the work, it's just a very different environment. You sometimes it's hard to believe you're in the same aircraft. In the front, it's all very procedural and you do a lot of calculating and looking around, and in the back, it can be very different, especially if they're having a lot of fun and they have nice passengers. So it's a very different environment between cabin and cockpit.
But Stefan, I'm just paraphrasing the bio that the listeners can also find on the homepage at aviation-quest.cc. And there is, yeah, that you came quite around a bit. I mean, A320, A330, A340, all around the world, even long haul. So can you give us a little bit an overview, because this was just a short mentioning of yours in our premiere episode, but how long did you work as cabin crew, and what was your general impression of this profession?
How long was our cabin crew? Oh God, I need to get my CV out and calculate. It was a few years. I started off on short haul, and then fairly quickly because
Just over the thumb. This is no interview. This is
yeah,
it is an interview, but it's a podcast interview.
yeah, no, I don't want to get it wrong. Anyway, yeah, I think it was 1 or 2 years on short haul, and the airline I was flying for expanded quite rapidly, especially in long haul ops. So after 2 years, I was already asked if I want to join long haul, which I did, and then I stayed there for quite some time. Um, so in terms of the job, I think people often have the wrong impression about cabin crew. Cabin crew is actually a legal requirement. They have to be on board. This is not because they need to serve you food, because the vast majority of cabin crew training actually deals with emergencies. So they are very highly trained in medical stuff. They do everything from learning how to deliver a baby, how to deal with heart attacks, all these things. So they're very highly trained. They're highly trained on the aircraft. They have to do firefighting training on a regular basis, where they actually go into real fire scenarios and they have to extinguish the fires. I don't know, they learn all about oxygen supplies and how to give it to patients. And so it's a very, very involved job. And people, I don't think, understand how much training these people have and how actually highly qualified they really are. Because day to day, their job is just, to serve drinks and food. That's not a legal requirement. This is just because they have to be there anyway. So the airlines thought, well, they might as well do something to keep the passengers happy. Um, so these people are highly trained. They are very aware of what's going on in the cabin. And if something goes wrong, like a fire alarm or something, then you will see they react very, very quickly and very professionally. At least that's my experience with the airlines I've worked for. Yeah. So maybe just a very quick thing. If I remember correctly, cabin crew didn't exist at the beginning of aviation, but people got sick a lot. And so they put nurses into the cabin. So there were nurses flying along, looking after the passengers. And that's actually the origin of cabin crew. That's where they come from. So that's how the job started.
Yeah, nowadays, can you give a rough overview? Certainly, you are no more in this field, but what are the requirements? How long is the training? Certainly, it also depends. This just give us, over the thumb answer. It's just a general requirement thing that some listener will think, okay, that's something I should maybe do research, or no, it's not for me.
Yeah, I first of all, I would, if you're young, if you're in the 20s and you want to see the world, I think it's an amazing way to do so. Uh, you know, uh, by the time I was in my mid 20s, I had been to anywhere and everywhere from China, US, Canada, South Africa. So I would definitely recommend that if this is something you think about, I would definitely go for it. It's a really cool job. Recommend in terms of requirements. It really depends on the airline. I mean, usually you need to be very, very fluent in English, because all the manuals of the aircraft manufacturer are printed in English, even, Airbus and all that. So that nothing is in I don't know, French or German or whatever. All the training is always in English. So you need to have a good command of the language. With most companies, you need to speak at least one, maybe two other languages. You need to have a something like an Abitur or Matura, so a high school degree.
A level and A levels. Yep. High
Yes,
school A levels is
yeah,
the equivalent.
exactly. Um, and then obviously you need to go through the selection process, which varies from airline to airline. Once you pass that, you go into a training course, which again, it really depends on the companies. They're a few weeks long. And you will find that the vast majority of that training has to do with safety, evacuation procedures. You have to do lots of exams. And once you've done that, then you start what is called usually like a FAM phase. So you are going to be an additional cabin crew on the plane, which means you shadow the crew, and then you sort of slowly but surely, take over more and more responsibility. The other thing you need to be aware of is, like everything in aviation, you are constantly having to do training. Every year, there's a big training course where you have to do exams and everything. And of course, before each and every flight, the whole crew sits together and we do a briefing. And the briefing consists of questions for every crew member. That could be anything, What do you do if a passenger has blue lips and looks like he's going to faint? Or what do you do, I don't know, if there's a fire alarm in the rear toilet, what's your nearest fire extinguisher, etc., etc. And you are, of course, expected to know the answer straight away. With most airlines, if you don't know the answer, they will give you a second chance. But if you don't know the second time, then there's usually a problem. Yeah. So you need to be on top of your game. But this is aviation. You need to know what you're doing. You're responsible for a lot of people. So the airlines expect you to have a good level of knowledge of everything around you.
So even though it's a fun job, even with a fun beginning phase, if I catch this up correct, it's a job for engaged young people who want to perform on their A game.
Yes, you need to understand that people often say aviation is not a job, it's a lifestyle. And I think to a certain degree that's correct. You're going to be flying on weekends, on Christmas Day. I've spent Christmas evening in Tokyo, This job really has a huge influence on how you live your life. And of course, with all the training going on, you often have to study at home. I usually still prepare for each and every flight at home, just to make sure that when I go into the briefing room, I've considered everything. So you need to be dedicated. That's what it boils down to. Regardless whether you're in the cockpit or in the cabin, you need to be professional and dedicated, and then you will see the job can be very fulfilling and actually super interesting.
Yeah, and speaking of dedicated and home preparation, I'm not leaving the question. I will come back with some in-depth question again, Stefan. But no, we will not forget about the work you did for this podcast with another video at our YouTube channel, Aviation-Quest Podcast. Talking of China, South Africa, what was this before? America. Where is the visual experience now happening in this podcast or for this podcast?
Yeah, I forgot again. Sorry, thank you for reminding me.
you,
So,
you do a lot of work, and I will not forget you. This is crazy. This is we are both no salespersons, but please watch a YouTube video if you want to
so
have a visual input. So the flight today is where?
yeah, so if you watch on YouTube, you can listen to us whilst watching a flight. And today's flight is an Emirates flight from Dubai to Cairo and is operated by the Airbus A380.
Oh, the big one. I
Yeah,
also see them sometimes here over Dormien. I think they take off from Zurich, certainly, and then they climb out here. They are quite impressive. And yeah, you cannot mistake them. They are even from the ground. You see them. An A380 is an A380.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but back to the topic. Did working in the cabin influenced how you treat cabin crew now or nowadays?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I can tell you not too long ago, I had a flight with cabin crew I'd never met before. And it was a long day. There was a lot to do. And so, whenever I'm finished in the cockpit with all preparations, it's nice to stretch your legs. So I usually leave the cockpit on the ground, between flights. And then if there's anything to do in the cabin, I'll just help out. And so after the third flight, one of the cabin crew looked at me and she said, "You've been cabin crew, right?" And I said, yes, I was. How do you know? And she said, I can tell. When a pilot used to be cabin crew, it's just different. They behave differently. So, yes, I think it does make a difference because you can see things from both sides, if that makes sense. I think I'm a bit more sensitive to the topic of unruly passengers, which unfortunately is a topic that's, all the statistics are going in the wrong direction. We have more and more passengers that become aggressive and unruly. And so when the cabin crew comes into the cockpit with concerns regarding a passenger that may be drunk or just aggressive, I think I'm very much in tune with that because I know exactly how that feels when you're in the cabin. So I try to work with them as best as I can to either diffuse the situation or, go down a very different route. Yeah. So I do think it influences you if you've done a job and then you work with those people. But I think that goes for anything. If you know the job of the other person, you have a much better understanding of what they are doing and what they're going through.
With this, you answered already halfway the second in-depth question. But anyway, maybe there's something you want to add because the second question here is, how do you see the synergy between cockpit and cabin in a general sense, Stefan? Just an overview.
Yeah, I mean, we are one crew, and this is very important. And airlines, especially the airlines I flew for, made sure that training is done both by cockpit and cabin together. Emergency training is usually done together. We train evacuations together so that we learn to work together as one crew. I think it's very important. There are many scenarios where we are 100% dependent on the cabin crew. Classic example is a fire in the cabin. They are doing the firefighting and they are the ones that need to keep us informed. There's nothing we can do in the cockpit in that scenario apart from declaring an emergency and trying to land as fast as we can. But everything else is down to the cabin crew. And of course, it goes the other way around. Sometimes we may have a problem in the cockpit where the cabin crew can't help us, but then their job is to secure the cabin, prepare everything for a landing. So we are one team. We have to work together. Communication is super important. They sometimes tell us things we didn't realize and the other way around. So I always, in every briefing before every flight, I always make it very clear to them that even though the cockpit door has to be closed, for them, it's essentially always open. If they want to come in and talk, and even if they just want to sit down and relax for a few minutes, they're always welcome because I think the communication between the two parts of the crew is absolutely crucial and can become very important if things go wrong.
Yeah, when it comes to communication, I did some homework here. We are speaking of cabin announcement systems. I think this is between crew and passenger. And we have the interphone. This is between cabin crew and you. Is this correct?
Yeah. In a broader sense, yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
In a broader sense, but in a podcast sense.
Yes.
So they can speak to you via interphone directly or also enter the cockpit whenever they want.
Yes, there are procedures for this, which I'm afraid we cannot go into. As you can imagine, since 9/11, things have changed a lot. So there's a certain procedure they must follow in order to enter the cockpit. But if they do that, then yes, they can enter whenever they want.
But I mean, career-wise, there is something really also with the purser position. I think that is to achieve. There is something going on also in the cabin crew, isn't it?
Yeah. You start as a normal cabin crew, and once you have enough experience, you can apply to become in some companies, it's called the senior cabin crew. And again, there's a lot of tests and exams and training courses. And then you are essentially responsible for everything in the cabin. And if you then go long haul, then usually you have to do additional training to become a purser, and pursers are the ones that are basically managing the entire cabin. So they're usually not involved in the service at all. So they're not serving anything. They're just there to manage the whole flight. If you imagine, on an A380, I think you have 25 cabin crew. So
Wow.
and you have hundreds of passengers, so you need one person to manage all that, make sure that everything runs smoothly. So that obviously is the career path in the cabin. Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, it's something maybe some listeners now might look on the career pages of different airlines. Or what is the best way to get concrete? Yeah, to get concrete into a career like this. I think just Google on the company homepages, or what would you say? Or visit the
Yeah,
company homepages and their career section.
exactly. Yeah, just go to the career section. They will list exactly what the requirements are. Quite often these days, they will give you the salaries and, all the benefits, because obviously cabin crew like us get cheap or even free flights in the spare time. So, these are all things to consider. And then, yeah, give it a go. Like I said, I had a blast in the cabin. I really enjoyed it. It's a part of my life. I really am glad I did it. Of course, I'm super happy now in the cockpit. And like I said, I have no plans to go back into the cabin. But especially if you're young and you want to, spread your wings and see stuff, I think it's a great job.
Stefan, do you think may can I tell something, so like the motivation for keeping on listening this long FAQ series? Should
Yes.
I should I put in here the question we will cover in the seventh episode, because this will be a quite interesting one. But for this episode, it will be. We thought, I think it's a good format to keep within these 30 minutes. Also for the comfort of listening to it, maybe in one go. But question number 8, yeah, spoiler alert.
It's a
uh,
teaser. It's a teaser. So now I'm curious. I'm very curious. What's the next question?
you can already prepare at least for the main question. So the eighth question is, what are the biggest disadvantages of being a pilot? Oh wow.
Oh,
So this is a spoiler alert, huh? Isn't it? This
that's
next
got
show is a must-have listen. These are the answers you always searched for and never got an answer on the whole internet. Yeah.
okay. Well, the disadvantage is that's going to be an hour-long episode. So yeah.
Yeah, at least.
Oh
No,
man.
but I think for today, it was quite an overview about the profession of a cabin crew. Something also, yeah, I have never heard something like this in this depth on a podcast. And yeah, let's see where Aviation-Quest.cc is going to. And as I said before, or as we said before, we are on YouTube. You can also write us if you want somebody if there's somebody out there who wants to be interviewed or got a friend in aviation who is maybe a perfect interview partner, please write us. Our email address is aviation@aviation-quest.cc. The homepage aviation-quest.cc. And yeah, would be super to have some interview suggestions, questions, or general feedback. Stefan, something from your side?
No, that's it. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your questions. And yeah, I had a great time. And I look forward to seeing you again or hearing you again next time around.
Thank you for listening to Aviation Quest CC Stories from Above. For more information about this episode and everything we do, visit our homepage aviation-quest.cc. aviation-quest.cc. We appreciate your time and support, and we'd love to have you back for the next episode. Until then, stay safe, stay curious, and keep your passion for aviation flying high.